Western Spring Television, as it is. Good afternoon to the viewer at home or wherever you may be, and welcome to Western Spring Television and to the program Pertinent Questions. Yes, on Western Spring Television, this is a no-holds-barred program. Let me begin by saying that the counselor is an expert or perhaps an older person who advises on matters he or she is considered to have some measure of expertise. Be he or a she, be it in a school, religious, social systems, etc., etc. The counselor, he or she, is supposed to have been trained. So he or she is able to give the best of advice in problem solving and human challenges. All over Nigeria today, the challenge that counselors face is more than Herculean. Their job is a very demanding one. This is because there is so much breakdown in the Nigeria and indeed the world social system, the human world. Today, the problems the society faces are very multidimensional, and we therefore need experts to advise us on. This afternoon on your weekly television program, Pertinent Questions, we have a counselor, a very great one for that matter, to engage very seriously. Apart from he being an educationist, my guest is Osun State Chairman, the Counseling Association of Nigeria. He's also the Vice Principal, Our Lady of St. Francis Catholic College, Osogbo. The cat may be out of the bag, but if it is not yet out of the bag, let me also say that our guest holds a Ph.D. in counseling psychology. Now we are getting closer home. Dr. Tunde Oyebiiyi, you are very, very welcome to Pertinent Questions.
Thank you, sir. And I'm indeed happy to be here.
It's been very difficult fishing you out of your environment that is made up of teaching, learning, religion, culture, knowledge seeking, etc., etc. We are glad you are here at last.
I'm so happy to be here. True, you are indeed very correct. Of those many parts that one engages in, we thank God that it's possible today to be here.
Yeah. I'm glad that this is your first outing here. How do you find the place?
Honestly, it is my first outing here. And I said I'm highly delighted to be here and to be associated with it. The CEO himself being a long-standing friend, former colleagues and all of that, all those with whom we have walked the roads together in the past. And to have just brought this has been a very hopeful thing for me that I will be part of this one day. Okay. And today I thank God that I'm here. And I thank you to our elder brother in the house, whom we looked on to several years back and up till now, and they are still relevant.
Thank you.
Coming here and really coming here to have, years back, it is unthinkable that you have a media house of this nature in Osogbo.
Privately owned.
Privately owned, that's exactly what I'm saying. And as such, to the glory of God, a son of the soil, who also knows his onions, actually had been able to bring this about. So to this, I say, it's awesome to be here.
It is often said that the reward of a teacher is very much in heaven. But this afternoon, something has changed that. You walked in and a young man stood up and said, "This is my vice principal." Incidentally, he happens to be the producer of this program. Gwemileke.
Well, you are very correct to say the rewards of the teacher is still in heaven. And sincerely, that's also the desire of every teacher that wants the name teacher should look forward to that heavenly reward, the eternal reward. But then if you are going to get eternal reward, you will see signs of it on earth.
Okay.
So and that's just the joy of part of the job, what I've just seen. Just walked in here now. I've seen a former student of mine, now a producer, and is producing this program. I think it's a thing of joy to be associated with such. And that's part of what makes you happy as a teacher. When you see what your products are doing and they are doing well. Yeah. I think you are very right to say that.
Yes, let's get to the nitty-gritty of what we came here to do.
Yeah.
What is counseling, Dr. Oyebiiyi?
Yeah.
And who is a counselor?
Well, counseling, it's a professional career for which one trained to assist another person who is in need of help that he can no longer cope with. So in counseling, there are two parties are in contact. One, a professionally trained person, and the other, somebody who needs help, is facing some challenges that he or she can no longer cope with on his or her own. And the professional now assists him to overcome such challenges and live meaningful life.
How different is counseling from psychology? How and how related are they, if possible?
Counseling is not different from psychology, but how related? Counseling is one branch of psychology.
Okay.
It's a branch of psychology.
All right.
And indeed, it belongs to what you call the applied psychology. So when you go through the background of psychology and psychological development and all of that, the application of those is what you get in professions such as counseling. So it's a branch of counseling.
So one has to have some measure of psychology training in.
It's not just some measure. The entire training in counseling is psychological.
Okay.
I am a counseling psychologist, for instance. So as such, you do general psychology and you come to major in counseling. Like some other people will major in educational psychology, others will major in clinical psychology. So these are branches, areas of specialization in psychology.
When you were young, the school system wasn't like this. We used to close at 2 o'clock, etc., and go back home or to the boarding house. Today, that is not the case. The school system is given to long hours. How does the counselor fit in?
Well, the school system that is given into long hours, we must really be sincere and check what constitutes that long hours. Because like you rightly said, you resume school 8 o'clock, you close at 2. Those days. Ideally, that is still on ground. You will also measure quickly now that you go home or you go to the boarding house. But you remember that by the time you get to the boarding house, you observe some break, and about a bit early in the evening, you are returned to class, to what you call the prep class. I think that is what has been merged in many places now, that rather than the child going back home, there is a break, and after that, the child comes back for what you call the evening, afternoon classes or prep classes. And that's for another 2 hours before the child goes back. Along the line, the counselor has a serious role in the life of the school, right away from the onset, because you come to discover now that some of those children now, they're tired, they do not find meaning in continuing studies, and when they are found, such children are referred to the counselor who diagnoses and find out what and what is responsible for that their attitude, so that they can be properly adjusted to the classroom system. So the counselor is at the center of that school life.
There are hordes of challenges facing the school system today at all levels.
Yeah.
Given that as a background, would you say our counseling have been, or our counselors, okay, or has counseling been very effective?
Well, we just have to put some things straight. Are the counselors available?
Okay, well, you should know better.
That's where we should actually start.
All right.
That virtually you get to most of our schools today, except in recent time that we begin a renewed effort to get them back to school. For years, for a period of over 20 years, officially in this state, counselors were sent out of schools. They were not given any role within the school system. And that was responsible for the multifaceted challenges and problems adolescents face in our society today, and especially around this place in Osun State. Back then, if history will permit us, counseling actually started in Osun State. In the old Nigeria, the first attempt to introduce counseling into the Nigerian system was from Osun State here.
Explain further. I'm
Being
interested.
part of the then Oyo State. The first sets of counselors in Nigeria were the likes of the late Professor Olumakinde, who was the first president of the Counseling Association of Nigeria, who established the Counseling Association in the University of Ibadan, along with the late Professor S.A. Shinde, C.G.M. Bakari, and Joe Akimboye is still alive, and some other of their colleagues like that, who came together in 1976 to start counseling. The first department of counseling was actually in the University of Ibadan.
Where the late man, Professor Bakari.
C.J. Bakari was a prominent professor there. And then in OAU, it was part of educational foundations. Of course, they were not having it as first degree. So they actually initiated counseling. The first school where they actually had some level of counseling was St. Teresa's Catholic School, Okeado, Ibadan. So, and the Reverend sisters who were missionaries at that time only gathered their children just at the end of the year to give them a kind of career sensitization. That was how counseling started. Okay. And from Oyo State to Osun State and all of that, we had a lot of practices there. But there came a government that said, what are they doing? They should leave the school. And they left. Only the last...
Leave the school to where? Or for where?
Some of them who have no, quote unquote, some of them who have no, their own type of relevant teaching subject were sent out of school. Okay. Some others were diverted.
I get your point.
Yeah, some others were diverted to go and teach other
without
subjects.
Mentioning any names.
I don't want to.
I get your point.
I don't want to. Okay. So I'm just being... No, as such, it is just of recent that we are now trying, and the last government officially announced that counselors should be allowed in school, and the principals of school should accommodate them. We are waiting for an official launching of that. So the first question is that if counselors were not available, where, how, and why will their roles be effective? So the few that are available, you would see those schools also making differences in the society. In the last 2 years, we have a few of the public schools who have joined the train that have allowed counseling practices to hold. We have about 2 of them in Osogbo here, 1 in Ife, that we have to choose as models where you find counselors in practice. And they are really being effective. Their children are doing well.
Therefore not wrong in saying, counselors, you are overwhelmed by the challenges on ground.
Of course, yes.
Why then would you say this is partially, or rather very strongly, responsible for the discipline, the measure of discipline that has today become the albatross in the education system? Would you say it is because counselors are not there?
I will sincerely hold that opinion. Because if counselors were there in the school, a lot of disciplinary issues would have been avoided. For instance, you have the sensitization programs that we have to be carried out. We look at the policy of education and the system of education as having three domains: the cognitive domain, the affective domain, and the psychomotor domain. By virtue of the subjects that are being taught in school, English, chemistry, physics, and all of that, that will take care of the knowledge base, which is the cognitive aspect of it. And when you come to the practicals, like subjects that are practical oriented, like the sciences, agric, food and nutrition, and all of these things, the psychomotor is enhanced, along with co-curricular activities like sports and all of that. The affective domain, which is the behavioral domain, that is actually the input of counseling. So how a child gets adjusted to school, how does he overcome phobia, how does he write examination without malpractice, what are the type of study habits that a child should have. So there is a difference between study and reading. So when a child is reading, you can read for pleasure, and after that you throw away the book. But when you want to study for the purpose of exams and future use, there is a technique. And these are techniques that counselors teach. So when these are missing, there's a problem. There's also the problem of time management. With a counselor or counseling practices in a school, children are guided to use their time well. And as such, issues of truancy in disciplines are reduced. So to a large extent, I submit to the school of thought that will say the absence of counseling in schools had contributed in no small measure to the level of indiscipline we're experiencing today.
How much of peer group pressure or influence has also contributed to this, where we find ourselves in today? Is it due to parental inefficiency? Is it due to the overwhelming situation that teachers generally and counselors in particular find themselves?
Well, the peer influence issues is a multifaceted one. While you cannot rule out the role of parents, the role of teachers, and the role of even counselors and other significant others as contributing to that. But when you have effective functional school, where you have counseling services, where you have competent teachers and all of that, the peer pressure can become positive because they could exert positive influence on each other too. As children could also be broken into study groups, and as such, they are meaningfully engaged. They could be broken into career groups, so that right away from that, you know those that are into engineering, those that are in carpentry club, those that are in farmers club, they will meaningfully spend their time and use it. But it's a situation where there's no coordination. That's a gap. And then you go back home now. The type of parents which we all have, that almost absent parents, is what we have now. Of course, a good number of them are also engaged in salary-based job. They leave home, they come back in the evening, the children are left on their own. And the social media has worsened the situation. In our days, you complain about television and radio. But today now, we all know what it is. Yeah. And as such, they learn a lot of attitudes, virtues, and vices from that. But in most cases, the vices spread faster than the virtues. And that's a problem before us. And that is why when you now return to school and you have a functional school, where there are functional personnel, they cannot be able to sieve it out and let them know the difference between a positive pressure and a negative one, and they'll be able to walk within the line. But it's just when they are left on their own, of course.
Yeah, we are at a crossroads now.
Yeah.
We have schools like your school that have some measure of counseling services. We have a greater number of them who don't have. How do we strike a chord? Sometimes you find teachers in some schools being very, very haughty and attacking parents. What is responsible for this?
Well, The reverse will have been the case, but then you get some teachers like that because
there may be very few, but then
there may be very few, but they are significant.
Yeah.
Often the principles of teaching and the ethics of teaching is this: if you say it's very few, it's only one person, and you may have done it to only one student, but that's the only one student that parents has in that school.
Yeah.
So whatever you do to that child is the 100% assessment of what you score. So if every child is doing well in your school, and my particular child that I brought to your school did not do well, your school has failed.
As far as you are concerned.
As far as I am concerned.
Yeah.
So as such, no matter how insignificant they are, it is important. And that's why we often insist that only professionals should be allowed to handle children. Because there are so many unprofessional teachers that also in teaching, they're just there as a last resort. Otherwise, a teacher who has gone through child psychology, who has gone through developmental psychology of a child, will know how to handle children better. But you have just said of a teacher being haughty. There are also parents who are more haughty and who also want to come back and give it back to the teacher. We have had cases of teachers being beaten up by parents in the school. Yeah. And unfortunately, we have also had some levels of recklessness on the part of government times back, who would also come to the public as, so if they do this, all those syndromes were there. And if you hear that from the chief executive of a state, and the parent comes to actually carry that one out, what do you mean? What do you expect? Yeah. So these are the real problems, and they are complicated.
Our program is in two parts. We have started we are completing the first part. We'll come into the second part where we will ask questions because my guest, Dr. Oyebiiyi, is the Osun State Chairman, if I got it right.
You are right.
The Counseling Association of Nigeria. We will look at those areas and other such broad areas. We have prepared the grounds now. In the second part of this presentation, we hope to move into that. Please meet us at the other side of the divide.
Born Jeremiah Oyebiiyi Obafemi on March 6, 1909, Obafemi Awolowo was a prime architect of Nigeria's independence and most consummate advocate of free education and social welfare in Africa's most populous nation. Erudite politician, thinker and philosopher, Awo was fondly addressed by associates and political colleagues, brought his unique attributes to bear on governance in the defunct Western region. He administered as leader of government business and the premier between 1955 and 1958. Obafemi Awolowo's premiership witnessed pioneering in multi-sectoral policy initiatives and execution. The Western region under his administration paraded several enviable records. First television station in Africa, first real estate in Nigeria, first high-rise building in Nigeria, first modern sports stadium in Nigeria, first agricultural settlement in Nigeria, first modern civil service secretariat in Nigeria, and first industrial estate in Nigeria. His face is on 100 naira denomination as a mark of honor for his distinguished services to his country. Western Spring Television identifies Obafemi Awolowo as a major character in history.
Welcome back. My guest is a counseling psychologist, as we have described him, is Dr. Tunde Oyebiiyi, also the chairman of Osun State Counseling Association of Nigeria. These are the aspects we will look at in this second part of our presentation. Yeah. Dr. Oyebiiyi, let me take you into the university system. Our universities have counseling departments and units. Yet our national problems in behavior continues to persist. What is responsible?
Well, the truth of the matter is that, yes, over the years, many of our universities have departments of counseling and behavioral sciences, counseling psychology, guidance and counseling and all of that. And we have trained a number of counselors. And yet, you said the first question I also they look at is that were they meaningfully engaged in the society? Unlike in the Western world, where you have counseling services and all of that, and people approach them, people even pay, people pay for the services rendered by counselors. You will discover that counseling came to us, like in many other parts of the society, through the schools. So, quote and unquote, we have the impression that counselors roles are limited to the school. And children. This is to children. But certainly this is absolutely wrong. Because when you talk about psychological intervention, in every human endeavor, you will see the need for psychological intervention. Mental health and all of those you find. And even in the mental health team, in medical practice, you find a psychologist there. You have a counseling psychologist there on that. But again, you only find them only in paid institutions, such as tertiary levels of medical practices. Below that, you hardly find them again. Other people come to render these services. One major problem that was responsible for this is being removed now. Because up till I think we have the 10th National Assembly now, the 9th Assembly was responsible for passing the bill of professionalizing counseling into law. So once that was settled, and now it's not everyone who could just come in. I'm elderly, I have information, I senior you, I can do this. There are professional practice of counseling now, and there are ethics that guides that, and there are qualifications that are required for the practice. So having settled that, it's not just the next level will have been also having effective practice in all the stratas of the society. Virtually wherever you find human beings, that is one place where you are also supposed. Indeed, every human person, every adult supposed to also sit down with a counselor once in a year, a therapist.
Like you go for medical check.
Yes, you should be able to, because when you talk about psychological well-being, you will need a psychological intervention. So when you talk about of your total well-being, you are supposed to, if for us counselors, ethically, we are supposed to also go at least for therapy once in a year.
I hope the Nigerian public is listening, and particularly my studio operators are listening, that doctor is prescribing a prescription for you once every year.
Yeah.
Go and see a counselor.
Because you see a lot of people who move about with a lot of depressions.
Yeah.
Either express or not. And some come to that level of difficulty that it even costs them their lives. And these are issues that could have been taken up in a therapeutic intervention. I
want to know what your association does, but before then, you must be worried as a counselor. Marriages, why are they failing? And young men don't even want to enter into that institution.
You see, that's part of the bane of this society today. Marriages that are failing. The obvious question that one could ask, how many people who are going to marry prepare for marriage?
In the churches and the mosques, they prepare.
Oh, well, that is just an assumption. If in the churches and the mosques where we do, and we are clouded with religious sentiments, to go about that.
Not social.
Not social, not psychological, not even competency in terms of who I am and what you are. You see, before you go into marriage, there are some processes that one should go into. It's not just enough to get a girl or get a boy and get infatuated. I'm of age, we're under pressure, my parents want to carry my baby and all of that. Without checking the level of their compatibility. There are psychological interventions you can do to that, psychological tests that you have to do to ensure that you are compatible psychologically. So if all these were taken care of, then There is also the effective therapeutic intervention for adjustment, marital adjustment, because it's a new life. You are just entering. Yeah. And as such, you need a lot of guidance to help you. And one of them is to understand the personality of your spouse. And when you want to really study and understand that, you need a psychological contract to be established. Most of this is missing. Even in the so-called, what we do in the church, in the mosque, and wherever we think we do it, those are not there. The professionals are not even there to examine examine it, because if you pick up a couple on a compatible scale, you will discover that some of them score so low that their level of adjustment will be difficult. But if they are able to score above average, then the gradual process of adjustment will go in. And unfortunately, again, you do not have professionals around where you can walk to now say, okay, I'm going through this. What can I do about this? How best could I look at this? So, and once marriages are collapsing, that is part of the serious problem we are facing in the larger societies. Because we now have children who are being brought up from dysfunctional homes. And once you are brought up from the dysfunctional home, what you don't have, you cannot give. So the likelihood of becoming a problem on the society is very high.
Well, thank you very much for this. I said it earlier, your association, you are the chairman, the Counseling Association of Nigeria. What are your association's roles in the society, and how well are you performing them?
Well, association rules, part of it is what you have asked me to come and do here, sensitization.
Okay.
And as much as possible, and I'm sure we were on Rave Radio some times ago, we have been on OSBC for some time, and actually for almost 5 or 6 years, we're there on Harmony. Yeah. And from time to time, we enlighten, we sensitize and give information if we talk about the larger society. We also provide professional support for our members, for their practices where they are, and whatever support we can give them in terms of training and continuous training. We do a lot of that. We also, on behalf of our association, interact with government and governmental agencies. You will remember one significant one during the COVID-19, and everybody went suddenly under lockdown. Exams were approaching. Children had to return to school. WAEC had set its questions and standards, and they have to come and write that exam, coming back from lockdown. How do you get such children to that? So we had to swing into action. We swung into action. And we sincerely thank the government at that time. Once we brought the ideas, they accepted it. And we had to go around from school to school, from place to place, to ensure that those children have good psychological support to really face school again. And we did a lot of that to get them adjusted. That's part of our role. And these other cases of rehabilitations too, a lot of people who, I was in a program far away outside the country, I just received a call that a particular man was about to commit suicide. He left, he was retired, was not having his money paid or something of that nature. Economy was down. Children were not there. The wife abandoned and all of that. And he felt. So we had to roll around and ensure that we salvage that situation. And today the man is adjusted and happy. So that's part of our rules.
Okay. Well, you have said something that makes me think my questioning may not be necessary. You've given the instance of a man who is now happy. I was going to ask you, how can the public measure your effectiveness?
Well, that's one of them. Another one is also it's the public would do a lot to make referral. Now we have a secretariat. We have to thank the government too for allocating that to us. It's at Long Igbalaye Street, the former Ogida Primary School. That's where we have our secretariat, and we have our contact numbers and all of that. So that when there's necessity for psychological intervention, we will give. We will do that. But to really measure...
Is it subject to pecuniary gains?
For now, there are no peculiarities. It is purely on humanitarian level at the moment.
Okay.
And that is part of our own duty and responsibility to salvage the society.
Can we say some government laws and indeed human rights intentions, their nature and notion about freedom, can some of these be responsible, or can they be impediments to your effectiveness?
Yes.
You spank a little child, you say human rights, you want to let a little boy or girl know that he didn't do well, and the way you and I grew up,
yes,
these days they will tell you it's human rights.
I understand that. And that's why I want to also separate punishment from counseling.
Okay.
The type of the discipline, we will talk about discipline, not really punishment in counseling. Child rights laws certainly are to be protected even by counselors. So as such, that a child has misbehaved, you go ahead, spank him, sometimes you cane him, can be counterproductive. If, for instance, the child is not even convinced. In most cases, when you are talking about, even when we were growing up, there have been punishments we have received that we know very well that we do not commit the offense.
Yes. I mean,
but because it's your father, you cannot complain. And it's your father that is melting the punishment to you. It's your elder brother or your parents that are doing this to you. You subject yourself to it. But in the level of awareness, children of these days will rebuff. And that is why it is possible to go the way of taking the child psychologically, trying to walk in his way and understanding. So those laws that you refer to, like the child rights law, will be complementary and not a negation. And if there will be necessity for punishment, after due, the child will accept that as a reward for his or her own undoing. So when that is not done, that is when abuse sets in. And that's the role of counselors, to also ensure that the children admit who they are, what they have committed this offense. Yes, I've committed it. So, and this offense requires this punishment. Fine. It's now left to the implementer to decide to forgive, allow it, or forget it, or attach to your behavior disease, and every moment it will serve serious roles. Number one is deterrent. Deterrent to the child so that he will not do it again, and deterrent to others. And there should be some level of retribution. You have destroyed public image, you have destroyed public property. Pay it back. So when a child is convinced of that progressive thought and processes, there will be no problem when you now spank.
But will the average young lad of today, is he ready to subject himself to that progressive thing you spoke about? They are always challenging, they are always arguing, they are always demanding their rights.
Very good. It may not be at the first instance, but with persistence and giving them, in most cases, those adolescents who want somebody to listen to them. They will want to be heard. And if you give them a listening ear and they are heard, they're able to express themselves, then they will be able to now listen to the other side. Not all of them, not all the time, but a few of them will be won over. That I can be sure of.
Before we go, our society today is very lethargic. Even our governments are lethargic, not to talk of the individual.
Yes.
What would psychology, counselors like you, what will you profess as solution to the young person's refusal, blunt refusal to be corrected?
Well, like I said, we did not get there one day. It gathered momentum. And the children are also products of the societies. In the past, we could be able to control a number of things. But now, the cyber age we are in the information age, information is at, you cannot.
Supersonic.
Supersonic. So you cannot pretend to say they don't know.
No.
So if you also know that, then the first effort we should do is to also showcase some good behaviors. Let them know that alternative to this, there are people who also exist in this regard. Alternative to this, consequences of these actions are possible this, and there are other people who are also towing the path of honor and they are reaching this. So if gradually we could come to terms with that, and we don't have to start with adolescents, that's often another mistake, because this problem starts from childhood. Whatever a child will become at the age of 6, it is sealed. It is sealed. It's only a matter of developmental processes. That's what follows after. So, but if at age 1, whatever are the principles or the demands of the society of that age, let every child learn it. And that's why parenting will be first thing I would personally want to recommend, that there should be conscious parenting.
These days of struggling.
Whatever we are struggling with, there must be some level of conscious parenting. What you want your child. Don't just leave your child to the society.
Okay. One last question, very briefly. This is the Japa syndrome. What, as a psychologist and as a counselor, in 30, 35 seconds, what can you say to our boys and our girls, and even to government?
Well, in the first instance, I will start with government creating an enabling environment for the children to operate on. I'm one of those in the early days who advocate, what is up there? What are you going there for? We can still live a better life here. But by virtue of the circumstances and the environment in which we operate on, it will be difficult for me to blame any child who wants to
go out.
However, anyone who wants to go out, let them pass through the legal process. Let them be legal aliens wherever they are. And more importantly, the adults, because I used to say it, like my children will argue with me that when we are just on a joking level and they will say, Daddy, don't bother. Chebi, you drink tea free of charge in you. You enter this thing free. Chebi, you are this. And
you are right.
They were right. But the same set of people that were having that are the people creating problems in the society now. And as such, they have nothing. They are graduated. You said they should go and study. They study very hard. The work is not there. They want to start a business of their own. Some wants to go to farm. The enabling environments are not there. So I think the governments will have to do seriously to creating and solve the problem of security. Once there's no those threats, it will be difficult to just look. It will be easy to look back and say, okay, step back home, do something meaningful, and get something out of it.
Time is not on our side. How I wish I brought these questions that have brought you out of your element. But then we just have to go. I have been speaking with counseling psychologist, Dr. Tunde Oyebiiyi. He is the Osun State Chairman, the Counseling Association of Nigeria. In the last 45, 46 minutes, you have seen him demonstrate passion and emotion for his calling. Some other time, we'll have the opportunity to say, welcome into the studio again. Doctor, I'd like to thank you
Thank you sincerely. I'm grateful for being invited.
To the viewer at home, this is the time and the point and time that we should call it quits on this program for today. It's been a pleasure welcoming, and I hope you also psychologically benefited tremendously from his what he said, the discussions we had. I am the alternate presenter of this program. Hopefully, Femi will be back next week. Each of us comes the alternate week. Thank you very much. I see you. I'm Adetoyese Shittu-Alamu. I thank you very, very sincerely. And as my tradition, I thank you repeatedly and repeatingly. We see you in 2 weeks' time.